Hey everyone, I want to give you, well, it probably won't be quick, but my heart is that this will be a quick wrap up of the voting. So far it is, let's see, it's at 141,277 votes counted with 500 to go. Now, 500 probably isn't going to affect any major races, possibly a PCO race because those are, a handful of votes in between. But the likelihood of any of those PCO races changing is slight, but it's possible. So here we are. We're on the verge of the last votes being counted. So I think it's pretty safe to go over some of these. So let's just jump in. So the county, the proposition number 11 that passed, which I voted no on. And again, I'm for resource, but for law enforcement, but a pretty decent chunk of this went to the prosecuting attorney's office and courts and whatnot. And I think that we need to really rethink supporting the prosecuting attorney's office as it currently stands, which we'll get to in a little bit. Very interesting kind of results there. So the U.S. Senator race, Tiffany Smiley did very well, 33.6% of the vote, and she'll be going against the incumbent Patty Murray that got 43% of the vote. So she's 10% down, or if you think about it head to head, basically 5%. She's going to make up 5-6%. And she wins because if she shaves off, 5-6% from the other person, and she gains it, which is head to head, what's going to happen. So very respectable, especially for someone who's pretty new, going against David and Goliath kind of scenario. So the big race, District 3, Congressional District 3, that took all the oxygen just pretty much out of the room. Jamie Herrera Butler yesterday conceded to Joe Kent. Joe Kent, I don't know what the final numbers is going to be, but it's about 1,000 votes up. And with going against Maria Perez, Glusenkamp Perez, whatever her name is. She's a socialist Democrat. And you had, the other big ones, obviously, Heidi St. John, very respectable, I think, at 14%. You can't hang a spoiler label on Heidi, not with 14%. I mean, you can if you're just, don't like her or whatever, but just from a, political perspective, 14% is very, very respectable. Vicky's 3.7, it leans more towards a spoiler kind of candidate scenario where you have someone who really didn't have a path, but yet stayed in the race, and so yeah, it was kind of a bit of a head scratcher on that one. Heidi was in early. Obviously, it was Heidi and Joe, a couple others that dropped out, and just kind of think about this. Joe is a better candidate as a result, truly. And that's the way the primaries are supposed to go. It's supposed to be tough. It needs to be tough because now, he's going to go into a race against a Democrat. And if you think the Republican primary was tough, you haven't seen anything yet. So last night, Joe Kent was at the CCRP, Clark County Republicans meeting where went over endorsements. And he was great. He came in like a victorious Roman general, in the sense of people were very excited, got a unanimous endorsement, and gave a great speech too, just as in saying, which is something I've been saying all along. He didn't say it quite in these words, but I think the spirit of it was there, that all sides are going to need to bind together to beat Democrats, or in this case leftist opponent in the fall. And that's what's going to need to happen. That's what's going to happen. I told him personally, listen, I'm 100% behind you. I know that I didn't vote for him in the primaries, and I covered that in the earlier video, but I'm 100% in, and I think he'll be a great representative for us in the people. From my perspective, though, I'm much more local politics kind of guy. I mean, people might not like this, but the truth is the Washington Three probably has the least amount of significance on everyday people. It's a 2-year cycle. So let's say we, got some bozo in there, we can get him out in 2 years. Or, with what, 400 plus representatives, it looks like the Republicans are going to take the majority with or without this seat. And so really it's going to have little significance. I'm glad Joe's moving forward with it, and I think he's going to be a good candidate, but I'm about the local, location, location, location. This is local, 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 local. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Anyways, so let's jump into those local races. Well, real quick, the Steve Hobbs, it looks like Steve Hobbs and I believe it's Keith Wagner are going to be jumping in. I don't know as much. I'll get more briefed and kind of, on top of the SOS races. But so jump into more local. Legislative District 17. Man, I'm so bummed that Hannah Joy did not win this. She fought an incredible race. She got 19.07% of the votes, 8,011, and Kevin Waters. I mean, she came within 700 votes or so of Kevin Waters, who's more of a Skamania County guy candidate. I don't really know much about it. I just don't understand why Anthony Ho jumped in with a very good candidate like Hannah Joy. It just it's really too bad. Terry Niles is a leftist. I know Terry Niles pretty well in the sense of had many exchanges, and she was right there in the thick of things with the Clark County Public Health conversations, just leftist communist type of mentality of like, hey, just leave it to the experts. We just need to keep our mouth shut and do what we're told. And how dare we Clark County council members shouldn't be on the Board of Health because they don't have a medical background. Hello, Terry Niles. So have you ever heard of the constitutional republic concept where the people get a say in the policies that are going to be put on them? And you don't need a medical background. You need to know your constitution. You need to understand how the representational government works. And unfortunately, she's running there. Kevin Waters, I just don't know enough about. From what I understand, he's more of an establishment candidate. Just really bummed. Hannah Joy's got a great story and bright future, I think. So we'll keep an eye on that. Legislative District 17. Paul Harris. It'll be Paul Harris versus Joe Keir. I think that's how you say it. But, Paul Harris is more of a uniparty type of candidate, squishy Republican type. He didn't support the mini initiative. When I asked him why, he's like, well, because, COVID mandates, it's not a winning issue, and it's not going to help us win votes in King County. What about 17th district? Forget about King County. I mean, it's nice to keep an eye on statewide overall, but I just was unimpressed. So Stephanie McClintock and John Zingale, Stephanie is kind of more of I doesn't come across as a conservative candidate to me. Definitely not going to be a strong oppositional if the Republicans are still in an opposition minority in Washington State. They believe maybe, they might jump into the majority, but if you don't have strong people that are willing to, go, fight these squishy kind of Republican types, they fold. We'll see. I hope that's not the case. Legislative District 18. This was the other real contested or, controversial one. Duncan Camacho from the Democrat, with 44% of the vote. John Lee with almost 20%, and that was even after he was deemed disqualified. And as I've said before, I'm not a fan of that strategy, even though it's probably not illegal. I thought it was pretty fascinating that the Colombian, afterwards, after the dust kind of settled, the Colombian's like, oh, well, John Lee might have a point in all this. After mocking him, of course, which I don't understand why leftist type of folks have to do that. It's just, there's an arrogance there that just is, it's the whole treating deplorables. And that's just real common, unfortunately. But anyways, after kind of smearing him, they were like, oh, illegally, actually. And the reason why that's the case is because many Democrats have done exactly what John Lee did, where they get in. But in his column, he was like, well, if he had gotten a legit apartment, like paying a legit apartments and utility bills, actually stayed there a little bit, all is good, which that's normally kind of what happens in those kind of situations. And but anyways, that being said, it will probably not hear the last of that. It's probably going to go to court, possibly. If John had gotten the number 2 spot, then he would probably have more of a case to make. I don't know. It'll be kind of interesting to see how the dust settles on that one. Greg Chaney pulled that out. I'm not a big fan of him. He's a squishy uniparty type of Republican. And so that's why I voted for Brad Benton. And many of you did as well, and did 14.78%. So it'll be very interesting. By the way, just to, go along with Greg Chaney, I mean, here is a partisan race. And Greg Chaney did not seek the endorsement from the Republican Party, probably because he knew that he wouldn't get it. That's just my guess, is that he would not get it. Didn't have the votes, so he didn't try. Feels like, the fact that he's on the executive committee of the Republican Party, treasurer, there's a lot of controversy there too, where he's supposedly not handing over documents of where the money's gone from their Lincoln Day fundraiser. Anyways, that will be an interesting race. Let's see, Legislative 20. There is no competition. Peter Abarno and Ed Orcott. It's kind of interesting. I live in the 20, and I'm getting fundraising letters from Peter, and I'm like, dude, you don't have any opponent. Okay. Anyways, Legislative District 49. Sharon Wiley, strong 61%. That's going to be a tough one. Park Lafayette, who's not a strong conservative at all. In fact, he rebuffed that as a label, and just like, well, we shouldn't label people at the Patriots United, when I asked him a question about being a constitutional Republican. I believe that's my question, and he just kind of blew it off. So we'll see. I just think generally you got to shore up your base on that. And so when you get a situation like this where you're not going to, Park is not going to shore up, he's not going to get a strong conservative fight. So I would probably say Sharon Wiley, leftist Democrat, is definitely, she's looking very good in that race. Jeremy Baker versus Monica Stonier, who is the David and Goliath situation. Monica's a machine. She has all the teachers unions, the labor unions. I mean, she is the quintessential kind of leftist. I mean, she was very much behind a lot of these bills that tied the hands of law enforcement. And, she's got some explaining to do on that. The voters are not happy at all. But, she came in at just about 60%, 59.99, 20,000 votes. But man, here's the big news. Jeremy Baker, no name, little David that, pulled out of the, tending sheep situation here, and Jeremy came out with about 40%. That is like all he needs. I told him all he needs is like 11%. Boom. And he beats, Goliath. So this is definitely a race to watch. I think Jeremy's got a great chance here, and need to do what we can to help him. I love David and Goliath scenario. So, county assessor is no one's competing there. Greg Kimsey, Brett Simpson. So here's another situation, not as strong as Jeremy, which Jeremy did a lot more campaigning, but Greg Kimsey versus Brett Simpson, 69%, almost 70% to 30%. That's actually really good, considering Brett has done very little campaigning to this point, and how established. I mean, Greg Kimsey's been in office for 20 plus years or something like that. Very fascinating. So Greg Kimsey is endorsed by the Democrats. He's got his sign. They got it front and center at the Democrats' fair booth. And last night he was at the Republican meeting. They did not endorse him. They shredded him and unanimously endorsed Brett Simpson over Greg Kimsey. That's a race to watch for sure. Scott Weber, good guy. He pulled in 98% of the vote. So District 1, what am I missing? I feel like I'm missing something there. Huh. Oh well, maybe we'll come to it. All right, so District 1, Clark County Council. So Hector Jose, I don't know how to say it, 32%. Glenn Young, 44%. Wow. And then Doug Coop came in last there at 22%. As you know, I said I would vote for Doug Coop. Now remember, District 1, this is very left-leaning district. This is like downtown Vancouver area, and this is to replace Temple Lentz. So, Glenn Young being in there would be far better than Temple Lentz. Glenn Young's good guy, talk to him. I don't think he claims to be a Republican. I think he probably, I don't know. But Hector is definitely a left-leaning socialist type of Democrat. So we'll want to keep an eye on that and see if we can get maybe Glenn Young in there. Like I said, it's way better than Temple Lentz. So District number 2, Chartisha Roberts, Kim Hamlick, Michelle Belcott. Very interesting race here, where Michelle just is like head and shoulders above any of these candidates. In fact, the Columbian endorsed her and Kim Hamlick, I think, and left Chartisha Roberts out in the cold in their endorsement, which is going to be very interesting now that it's Michelle Belcott and Chartisha. What are they going to do? Are they going to endorse Michelle Belcott? I believe they'll come up with some reason to say, oh, we just can't, which is going to be so weird that they did not endorse Chartisha in the primaries, but endorsed Michelle. What they were hoping is that they could help Kim, who is a uniparty type of candidate. I think that she identifies more as a Democrat than a Republican, even though she said she was a Republican. I just, from her positions, I just didn't see it. I mean, she's super nice person, very personable, things like that. But just, it was very clear to me that she would be a kind of a Julie Olson 2.0 kind of situation, where she probably vote more with Democrats than Republicans, maybe on a few issues, be kind of conservative-ish, but for the most part, tolls, light rail, and medical mandates just, came out and said that she would follow in line with it. And so there's pressure there, and that's what we have to watch out with candidates is, are they going to go in there to represent us, or are they going to go in to feel like that they're extension of government, that they need to, in fact, Kim articulated this, so did Chertisha, that, there's some kind of duty to go in there and toe the line. No, that is a complete opposite of what they're supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be going in there to represent us and protect us, protect our rights. That's what the Constitution is all about. The Constitution is about protecting the rights of citizens from the government, from becoming tyrannical. And Lord knows we need we need it. I just want to mention to you write-ins. Typically, what you see for write-ins is about 0.5%. Where people just kind of put in write-in. Keep that in your back pocket there, because we'll look at some of these other write-ins and go, interesting. So the last one, District 5 of Clark County Council, Don Benton, very strong, 29%. Almost overtook. I mean, if probably there was another 10,000 votes, I believe Don Benton would have come in first place, but Sue Marshall just barely with 9,973 votes. Don Benton had 9,493 votes. And the way that he was catching up, like I said, another 10,000 votes, very well could have put him in the lead. What was surprising about this was Rick Torres, no name, didn't campaign that much. I mean, a little bit here and there, little spurts. But really, I mean, he wasn't at the candidate forum. He wasn't, there's several things that he just was a no. Patriots United, he was a no-show on, and he was in town for the for the Reform Clark County one, and so my guess here is that he was having significant help from someone, I would guess probably the Horch campaign, because to get 25% of the vote with, I mean, he told me that he travels out of town during the week for his work quite a bit. So that's a head scratcher, how you pull almost 25% of the vote with as little campaigning that he did. He did some, again, but just for a no name to go up against and come within 4%, 5% of Don Benton, there's something doesn't add up there. He had significant help from someone, either I know that executive members of the CCRP, Clark County Republican Party, they were supporting Rick Torres. I would imagine that maybe he had help, like I said, from Horch. I don't know, but that was a stunner. And Richard Rylander pulled 15% of the vote. That's about what I expected, considering his lack of campaigning. He just did not campaign. I mean, he came to the events, and he did put up some signs, but I just didn't see a really strong campaign effort. I think he really had a shot. And the reason why I voted for Benton, as I explained, was I think Dick's a good conservative, good man. He just didn't have that fight. He didn't have that experience of coming in there and really, I mean, there's just a great pressure to kind of go along, to get along, mentality. And I wanted to see more fight from him. I hope he understands. He's a good guy. All right, Tony Gulick, here we go. Here's where this is very interesting. Obviously, didn't have a write-in. I mentioned that I was writing in Angus Lee, and I can't wait to get these results because, like I said, about, you see 0.3 to 0.5% of write-ins. 3% write-ins, over 2,800 people wrote in. So I'm very interested to see how many of those are for Angus Lee. But that is a huge number that I wonder if Tony Gulick's like, who is that person? Who got all those votes? Because that is a huge write-in. For example, like the county sheriff that I'm going to talk about next, 0.38%. That's about what you see between that and 0.5%. All right, county sheriff, Ray Reynolds. Whoa, this is a stunner. In fact, Yeah, I see that it tightened up even more. So he got almost 41%, and John Horch got 42.75%. I bet you the Horch campaign is like going, I mean, they raised over $100,000. I'm guessing it's at least 2 to 1 on Ray Reynolds. Last time I saw, I think it was like 40,000 that he raised. John Horch had over $100,000 raised, and wow, I mean, just it's Ray's just run an incredible grassroots campaign. I voted for Ray in the primary. I like to in these kind of races. I like to kind of reset a little bit, but I mean, I lean towards Ray for sure. John Horch, it came back to bite him on the NAACP video where he said he, thinks that the people should have been arrested at the Legacy Hospital. When just 2 days prior, he kind of that anyone who was at the Patriots United event, and then if they watched that video, felt like something was really off in those answers. From what I understand, David Shook has endorsed Ray Reynolds, and that's a big deal. So this is a race to watch. It's going to be interesting. And Alicia Topper, County Treasurer, we're almost done here, so hang on. 97% of vote. As you know, I said that I was writing in Misty Ray, which just a little more background on Misty. Misty, 20 plus years in the Air Force, was pretty much forced out because of the vax mandate that came in, and which was terrible. She loved what she was doing and working, and it was a real loss for her. So this was more of a kind of symbolic vote, even though honestly I think that Misty could go in there and do a great job. Alicia Topper is a Democrat kind of puppet, in my opinion. Nice person, but she'll just go in there and toe the line what they want. But anyways, so again, 0.5% is what you see in write-ins. 2,138 votes, equaling 2.28%. So what, almost five times what you typically see. So pretty cool. I mean, interesting to see again how many of those write-ins are for Misty Ray. Public Utility, Nancy Barnes, which seems to be like, clear choice. She's going to be going up against Don Steinke, whatever, and who's, I guess, a pretty strong leftist, wants more money even though they don't really need it. Kind of weird. I'll skip some of these other, like the little school district ones. Those were, uneventful. The fire rescue passed strong, no problems there. Let's see. Oh, in the PCO races, I just want to highlight a few things that Mark Engelman beat David Gallatley by just a handful of votes. If you're not interested in these PCO races, they're pretty fascinating, I think, because they just come down to just a handful of votes. Like Mark beat David by 6 votes, something like that. So yeah, it's pretty fascinating, these like little races, and they're just like down in the trenches, and Kathy Carr beat by like 13. The big race that a lot of people were keeping an eye on, Sally Snyder beat her opponent, which at one point, I think it was the last reporting before this one, she was only up by 1 vote, I think, or a couple of reports ago, and then ended up to be 16 votes up. But the race that everyone was kind of watching was Jamie Clark, who I personally know, good friend, and Joel Matala, the chair of the Clark County Republicans Party. Jamie Clark beat Joel Matala by a pretty decent margin. It was 52% to 47%. And so yeah, it's was it I think like 14 votes. So isn't that something? Just 14 votes, and I think it's pretty fascinating to see these little micro races, so to speak. And let's see, I'm trying to see if there was any other real big ticket there items. I thought that there was. I'm probably missing one or two. But anyways, so pretty fascinating. I think things are on the move here. I'm just kind of scanning through. Yeah, Jana Meyer, she beat hers. Let's see. I'm probably missing some. Oh, the Brett Simpson beat his opponent. Hansen. Adam Shetler. He won his race. So good job, Adam. Anyways, so that's the breakdown of the races. I know it's 30 minutes here. Thanks for hanging in there. Thanks for voting, if you voted, and take a breather and get ready, because we got work to do. See, it's so important to stay engaged in this process as well as what's to come, because then these candidates, they know they know we're watching. For example, Greg Kimsey came into the Republican meeting last night, and he was probably thinking, well, I'm going to grab that Republican endorsement like I've always done, and I'm just going to play these turkeys, and not having it. Not having it. We're watching. We're engaged. And that alone has impact. And then, staying engaged and keeping watch on these folks is so important, because that's when corruption settles in, is when there's no eyeballs looking. That's when the candy gets stolen, right? It's not when the clerk is watching, it's when they're not watching. And so I appreciate you. Stay engaged. And we got work to do. So take a little breather and then get ready for action, and then we'll keep going. So thanks much.